I'm bringing down.
Welcome, good afternoon, and to the 9th and final Democratic Candidate Forum here for Leon County, featuring candidates from District 2. I am Chuck Hobbs, the publisher of the Hobbsovation Point, and I am pleased this afternoon to be able to discuss some of the salient issues that are impacting Leon County currently and will in the future, with several very talented candidates who are vying for your vote. So with that, I can announce that in this race, we have Sabrina Allen, Christian Caban, William Crowley, and Max Epstein. And I hope that I did not mispronounce Mr. Christian Caban's name incorrectly, but I'm sure he'll correct me shortly once he has an opportunity to introduce himself to each of our viewers. But we are not joined this afternoon by Ms. Allen. So the three gentlemen and I are looking forward to having a very robust conversation. So without further ado, I would like to give Mr. Caban the first opportunity to introduce himself. He will be followed by Mr. Crowley, and then Mr. Epstein, you'll have an opportunity to introduce yourself as well. If you could please keep your initial introduction to 2 minutes, that would be great. Thank you. Mr. Caban?
Mr. Hobbs, thank you so much. Can you guys all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. My name is Christian Caban. Thank you all for having me. Yeah, I see you laugh. Yeah, it's Caban.
Okay.
Everyone pronounces Caban, but it's okay.
Okay.
I'm a small business owner. I've lived in Leon County for 11 years. I started, as a college kid making minimum wage, and I have worked really hard, and I've made Leon County my home. This is where I've invested. This is where I've built my foundation. I've seen firsthand that Leon County has an equality issue, especially when it comes to prosperity. That is one of the main reasons why I'm in this race. I think as a county, specifically District 2, that we could really do better. I think it's been neglected. I think we should be allocating better resources to it. You'll see that in this forum, my answers are short and sweet. I'm someone that doesn't talk much. I'm simply just get results done. So thank you again for having me, and I'm looking forward to listening to everyone else.
Thank you so much and welcome. Next, Mr. Crowley, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. My name is Will Crowley, and I'm running for Leon County Commission District 2. Currently, I work as a budget analyst at FSU College of Medicine. I also represent this district at the DEC Steering Committee, where I've been a member for a few years. Before that, I was at the state legislature working on budget and policy. I say all that to say that I've got experience in this stuff. I understand how to work a budget. I understand how to do budget negotiations, how to develop policy, and how to implement it. I can hit the ground running on day one. I don't have to rely on unelected staff to do my thinking for me. Frankly, I think that that elected officials have kind of served as a rubber stamp for staff for far too long. I'm going to put an end to that, and I've got the skills and the abilities to do that. I also don't take any money from developers or other big businesses, because I've seen the way that they influence our elections. They get the folks that they want in office, and those folks, whatever they might say during the campaign season, once they are in office, if our interests diverge from big business interests, they choose big business every time. That's why we saw almost $30 million go to a football stadium in the middle of a housing crisis. That's why we saw $80 million on a roadway to nowhere on the northeast side. Meanwhile, the kids of this district walk dirt paths along Orange Avenue. They walk dirt paths along West Tharp. It's no secret. We've known that these are the issues for a long time, but for whatever reason, our leaders don't have the political will to get a budget that works for people. So that's why I'm in this race. I'm tired of seeing the lack of investment on this side of town. I'm tired of seeing Leon County lose talent because we can't have affordable housing here. Because we can. We're not a broke community. We've got almost a $500,000 budget at the county. We just need a budget that works for folks. And that's why I'm here. I want to get in to the county commission, represent District 2, and deliver a budget that puts people over profits. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Crowley. Last but not least, Mr. Epstein, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Max Epstein. I'm also running for Leon County District 2. I've lived here in 32304 pretty much my entire adult life. I moved here in 2006 to attend FSU, and I didn't leave. I went back to Orlando and St. Pete for a couple of years, but Leon County and Tallahassee is my home, and that is why I am running for this seat. I've seen a lot of changes in our community, that are not good. I've seen environmental issues, and I really haven't seen that much progress despite how much rhetoric there has been about our poor zip codes or disadvantaged zip codes. I'm an artist. I formerly had a glass blowing studio in Railroad Square, and the gallery focused on promoting the work of Black and other marginalized communities, women as well. And I'm also an environmentalist. I'm part of the Tallahassee Sewage and Wakulla Basin Advocacy Group. Currently, I tried is the key word, to get the county to approve a $3 million grant to remediate and restore Lake Munson. They have decided to go in a different direction despite the board voting to pursue this grant, which is very unfortunate because it's affecting the people who live nearby. We have people who are getting sick, going to the hospital, skin rashes. We have neurological problems and a suspected cancer cluster near Lake Munson. You also know me as a researcher at the DeVoe Moore Center. I'm studying our local government's use of eminent domain to displace folks along FAMU Way. This is where some of my experience with Blueprint. I've done dozens of public records requests. I'm very familiar with how the system works. What we've discovered is Blueprint was not honest about following federal guidelines. They claim they didn't accept federal funding for FAMU Way. Well, they did. And that means they underpaid folks quite severely, and we can show that. Another big issue is the use of eminent domain and not replacing housing units. Over 100 units were demolished for the construction of FAMU Way without replacing them. And now we're talking about another Blueprint project going through Providence and Callan that will take dozens of homes and units. Will they be replaced? Will people be compensated correctly? That's what I'm concerned about, along with fixing our infrastructure and extending public transit to the south side so we can get folks to the Amazon Center, so we can get them to these big companies that are slowly trickling into our community.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for your introductions. Now, we're already starting to get some questions, which is great. Audience feedback is so wonderful during this time of year or during the election season. And so with that, I want to remind all of our attendees that we will have some time to take your questions at the end of the program. We're already starting to see some questions coming in, and that's great. We have co-hosts who will be monitoring the questions as they come in, and they will alert me when it's time for us to pose those to the candidates. Now, we are going to the major part of our question and answer at this time. As a reminder to each of the candidates, your time to respond to each question will be monitored. I will be keeping time and will notify you when your time is up. Now, actually, I won't be keeping time, but that lovely voice that you hear is the person who's going to tell you time is up, and please stop when your time is up. Most questions will have a 2-minute response. Some will have 1 minute, and one will allow for a very short response. So please don't feel as if you need to take the full amount of time if you have answered the question. You may also want to make a note or two of some topics that have several questions embedded within them. We will begin in alphabetical order, just as we did with the introductions. And then last thing I want to say is the theme of the Democratic Candidate Forum is, if Leon County is to be a success, then our children's lives must be a success. It's important to remember this will embrace the philosophy of appropriate care and services provided to the children of Leon County from cradle to graduation from high school, and ideally would include some form of traditional higher education experience or vocational training. Infant mortality in Leon County is high for a county our size. Approximately 50% of students in Leon County are performing at grade level in language arts and or math. So with that in account, we just want to make sure that because the total school population for Leon County is about 33,000, that puts well over 4,000 students out of school on an annual basis. And we are not sure what happens to all of these students. So we're looking forward to some insight from you gentlemen on this very crucial issue. With that, we will now start the question and answer session. Topic number 1, affordable housing and food insecurity. Affordable housing and food insecurity. What must be done to solve the affordable housing and food insecurity problems in Leon County. Please tell us what specific actions you will take, if elected, to achieve innovative solutions so that county residents can find housing costing less than 30% of their basic gross income, so the choice does not have to be between paying the rent to shelter their families or buying groceries to feed their families. I'd like to start with Mr. Caban, and then we'll go to Mr. Epstein. No, I'm sorry. Mr. Epstein, yes, and then Mr. Crowley. So go ahead, take the floor.
Mr. Hobbs, so is there a specific question you're looking answered, or do you want us to talk about each topic just individually?
Yeah, go ahead and hit those topics individually, because obviously it's a compound question, but they are related. So we're talking about how would you as a commissioner first address the affordable housing issue? When it comes to affordable housing, it is the biggest countywide issue. We hear about it not only in Leon County, you hear about it, nationwide and statewide. Specifically in District 2, when we're discussing affordable housing, I really do believe that it's more than just a policy issue. I think it's a quality of life issue. I think it's a lack of high-paying jobs issue. I think it's a poverty issue. I mean, we need to get folks higher-paying jobs. There's a lack of inventory. In my opinion, it's simple economics. There's a supply and demand. There's not a lot of houses. There's not a lot of houses in Leon County. So I do believe we need to look at, bridging the public and private sector. And we need to look at, okay, in the District 2, there's so much opportunity where we could come in and we could build affordable housing. We could build homes. We could create more inventory. But the root of the issue is we need jobs. So Absolutely.
folks gotta have the ability to work. They have to have the ability to not just live on an hourly wage, but a career path. When it comes to food insecurity, I know this very well. I'm on the board of the Children's Home Society. We have a very specific niche in the 32304 area code working with Sable Palm. It is no surprise that kids living within a quarter mile from where I'm sure most of us live in town are struggling to eat, and they're hoarding food, taking it from their homes. I think that we should look at allocating enough resources to Second Harvest of the Big Bend, Meals on Wheels. There are professionals that do this work every single day, and I think we need to make sure that they're properly funded so that they can meet the needs of our community. But before I end, I also think that a lack of food also ties to poverty. And I think if we can just get folks career paths and we can bring more, equal prosperity to District 2, I think it fixes both these problems. Excellent.
Excellent. Next up, Mr. Epstein.
So one of the key focuses of my campaign is anti-displacement. I think it's time that we stop seizing private property and housing units for these infrastructure projects. And I think we need to also invest into public housing directly. We're looking at the Orange Avenue apartments, and there are lots and lots of families that are being displaced, and not a single unit of public housing is coming back. 37%, I believe, it's over a third of our public housing units are now gone for that project. That is unacceptable to me, and I encourage you to look at that lawsuit that was filed, because it lays out Tallahassee's history of doing this. It's happened in Frenchtown, and it's happened in other places. So we need to make sure, especially if we are going to displace people, that they have a place to go. That's not happening with Orange Avenue. And if you look for FAMU Way, people were getting about $100,000 for their homes. Well, the median household at that time was about $275,000. We need to focus on the people that live in these communities already, and figure out how to get resources to them. So I think we need to look at all of these projects like the Airport Gateway and see if we can reinvest into our communities. As far as food insecurity goes, we need to be funding, I believe, little bodega type community neighborhood scale grocery stores. And there's a way to do this to spur economic opportunity. I think that we had a great chance of doing this until we spent 8 years of our economic development money on the FSU stadium. And there's always a compromise to be had. And we need to have more of a discussion around that as opposed to just one side versus the other, because we're not going to make a whole lot of change in our community unless we're all on board. So I think that kind of wraps up my points there. Anti-displacement, invest in existing communities. And also, last thing I'll say is we need to really look at, when we expand the urban services area for new development, to actually tally and make sure that it makes financial sense, because we are taking dollars away from these existing communities when we do that. We need to be bringing more folks in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Epstein. Mr. Crowley, your turn.
Yes, thank you very much. The affordable housing issue is one of the most important ones from my perspective. I know a lot of folks who have excellent educations, but they're leaving this community because they can't find an affordable place to live that's dignified, that's safe. And there's a lot of things that we can do about that. We can leverage our public land. We've got public resources, public land that keeps getting sold off without out of competitive bidding process or a recent appraisal. And it's for these sweetheart deals for, student housing development. That's not what we need. We don't need more student housing. We need more housing for our workforce, for our retirees, for young people trying to start their lives. And we can look at other ways. We need an affordable housing trust, a land trust, where we can preserve land that can be used for just this purpose, that we can have development on and lower that cost to get in there. I would like to see, looking at the rents, there's a way that we could stop displacement immediately, and that is looking at an emergency freeze on rental rates. The state constitution does prohibit local governments from instituting any sort of freeze on rent increases, with the exception of in the event that the local government declares a housing emergency. And if something like 20% year over year increases for rent is not an emergency in the middle of a pandemic, then I don't know what is. I think we need to take some serious look at that. I also think, we need to take a look at our comprehensive plan. That's another area where my expertise really shines through with my background in urban planning. I want to take a look at that comprehensive plan and try to modernize it. Taking a look, when I was out in Fort Braden, I was talking to folks who were interested in building accessory dwelling units on their property, but the zoning code, the building codes would not allow it. Zoning regulations would not allow it. And I think that's one way that would very quickly increase the housing stock that's available to folks if we can, just modernize our zoning ordinance. But it doesn't matter what policies you have, it doesn't matter what initiatives you have, if you don't have the budget for it. And we do have the budget for it. We're not a poor community, but we keep spending our money on things we don't need.
Your time is up.
So just to wrap it up, I would like to see better investment in those issues.
Okay, thank you very kindly, Mr. Crowley. And we head into question number 2, and we stick with the theme of poverty, but this time we want to discuss it from the angle of mental health in Leon County. And we must look at the current situation, which presents a systemic problem. The poverty rate in Leon County is approximately 20% of all residents. One of the many prices that individuals, particularly our youth, pay whose lives are affected by these adverse circumstances is their emotional and mental health. For example, 1 in 5 kids experience a mental health condition, and only 20% of them get help. 50% of ages 14 plus with a mental health condition will drop out of school. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for individuals aged 15 to 24. So how do you propose to get residents who are living at poverty or at very low income levels and our at-risk children on a path to successful educational experiences and ultimately jobs paying a livable wage? We'll start off this one with Mr. Epstein.
So my partner is an educator. She's a high school teacher, and I hear about this all the time. And I think there are opportunities for the school system to go after mental health counselors for free, basically through Medicare and Medicaid. That's not what the county commissioner does. But if you also look at Rickards, they have a welding program. And the people that graduate from there earn more than their teachers do. And I think that this is an excellent time to look finally at none of these solutions are new, right? They've been talked to for a long time, but a technical college for high school students. And if you catch them early, it's a good way to break down racial and gender barriers for these traditionally male type vocations like welding. Once you get to lively tech and others, it's a little more ingrained. As far as mental health, it's important. And it's a cornerstone also of my campaign because I'm going to be bringing my own mental health problems. I don't know if you want to call it a problem, but I suffer from depression and anxiety, and I'm going to be talking about it constantly on the podium. You know, I hear other people talking or our leaders talking about other people and their mental health, but I'm going to be there to be a champion and represent folks. You know, we have some services, the Appalachia Center. I hear a lot of mixed reviews about it, but it's pretty clear that we need to be able to get resources to people on the lowest end of the socioeconomic ladder. And that would be something I'm going to be honest, I don't have a solution for it, but I think that we can go after grants. It's a really important grants. We can, there's a new grants manager position coming in to the county. We need to really be focusing on getting free money. And also, how can we look at the budget and reallocate resources?
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Epstein. Mr. Crowley, what are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, mental health is obviously extremely important. I believe that mental health is kind of the upstream issue that influences a lot of downstream issues, whether it's crime, whether it's addiction, drug use, deaths of immiseration. We see it's something we see a lot. I think that there are ways that we can work with mentorship programs, with utilizing resources in our community like the College of Medicine and their private practice programs. But frankly, I think that a big part of it, and this is something I've learned from folks at the College of Medicine, is it's a lot more important what happens in between doctor visits than it is at the doctor visit itself. It's very hard to adopt healthy strategies, to take your medication, to keep an eye on your mental health when you're worried about how you're going to make your rent payments, how you're going to put food on the table for your children. So I think what the community can do, the best thing that the county can do is invest in the people themselves, so that their material conditions improve, so that they have more breathing room, they have more time to do the hard work that is working on your mental health. But we cannot do that if we don't allocate our resources effectively. That's where my background in budget and finance comes in. That's where my independence of not taking developer funds comes in, because I don't have to do anybody any favors. I don't have to rely on staff to tell me where the money is. I can see it for myself, and I can make my own decisions in consultation with the folks who live here based on what they need.
Very good. Mr. Caban.
Mr. Hobbs, I made a bunch of bullet points because that was like such a loaded question. And I think that there's so many different angles and solutions here. So I'm going to start on the mental health aspect with our youth. I'm a firm believer that our youth are the future, and you can't change issues over time without starting with our youth. My partner works in mental health, specifically with children. I'm on the board of the Children's Home Society. I am a firm believer that we should have a mental health counselor at every public school. And I think that we should be going to the school board and we should be looking at how to get this done. We have social workers at every school, but there's a significant difference between a social worker and a mental health therapist. They both are needed, and they both have their strong, assets. But mental health, you're fixing problems. You're helping a child that's going through issues, where I really do believe social workers are kind of navigating them to the solution, if that makes sense. Next, I have homelessness. We all know that we have a homelessness problem, specifically in District 2. And majority of those folks, they have mental health problems. And so I think we need to get them off the streets. I think we need to get them in housing. And I think we need to assess their problems and try to get them rehabilitated so we can get them back into the workforce. Next, when we're talking about workforce preparation for our kids, I believe we should have a trade high school in Leon County. I think that times have changed. Not every kid is destined for college. I'm a firm believer of that. I went to trade school for 2 years in high school. I was in a business program, and it really changed. It really changed and prepared me for the next level of my life. And I think with that kind of training, we will see kids come out of high school and get high-paying jobs. And in Leon County, but right now, trade jobs sometimes pay more than 4-year or master's degree programs, and that's a fact. And when you have those kind of jobs filled, you see it's cheaper now to build a home. You see, cost of construction goes down, which goes back to our point of affordable housing. So I could talk all day about these issues specifically because they're so important to what we're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you for your response. I also would like to let the audience know that our fourth candidate out of District 2, Sabrina Allen, has joined the Zoom this afternoon. We'd like to welcome her, and we're going to start getting her opinions and thoughts on some of the questions as we proceed forward, which is a perfect time to segue into our next question. Roads and infrastructure. Now, we all can agree that safe access to schools and grocery stores, as well as daycare centers and jobs is critically important, especially sidewalks and bike lanes as well. With that in mind, why are so many of the roadway projects approved by the Capital Region Transportation Planning Agency for widening roads? These roads include sections of Crawfordville Highway, Woodville Highway, Orange Avenue, Pensacola Street, Tharp Street, and Ocala Road. Traffic engineering research tells us that wider roads are less safe for drivers, bicyclists, and pedestrians. Widening roads means the destruction of trees and the natural beauty of the Leon County environment. So, do you agree with the philosophy of, quote, if there are traffic congestion problems, then widening the roads is the best answer, end quote? What ideas do you have for solving transportation problems that would involve moving people and not wider roads for moving cars in Leon County? So I'm going to start with Ms. Allen on that. Do you agree with the philosophy of if there are traffic congestion problems, then widening roads is the best answer? And after you answer that, the second part is, what ideas do you have for solving transportation problems that would involve moving people and not widening roads for moving cars in Leon County? Ms. Allen?
Okay. Chuck, it's Sabrina. Hi. It's Sabrina M. Allen.
Yes.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Okay. Now, I will tell you, I haven't done a lot of studies, and I haven't tried to find out a lot. I've been meeting with a lot of people. Excuse me. No. Excuse me. Hey, Ronnie, I'll call you back. So, but according to what you have already said, Chuck, if it's dangerous to widen roads, then I oppose riding. I would have to see the research, and it sounds like you have done your homework and you say it's dangerous. If it's dangerous, I would oppose widening roads. I would advocate for transportation buses in some of these rural areas. No buses are running in Woodville, none in Bluntstown Highway, the Bluntstown Highway, Highway 20. So there are no buses. So that would help if we could get that kind of transportation, buses, and widening the roads might not be the answer if the research says that it's not, but maybe putting in a passing lane so that you can pass easily and not have to just sit and wait in order to move forward. Maybe putting in a lane where you can make a right turn easily. That might be an option. I'd have to study it more.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Crowley, do you agree with that suggestion that, quote, if there are traffic congestion problems, then widening the roads is the best answer? And then secondly, what are your thoughts with regards to solutions to this particular issue?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I absolutely do not agree that widening roads is an adequate solution. This is, again, where my expertise really comes through. I've got a graduate degree in urban planning where I focused on transportation planning specifically. I think that the way that we move people around has a huge yet hidden impact on inequality, on the environment, on so many other issues. I think that we could focus instead of widening roads to make them more dangerous to cross. It doesn't even alleviate traffic conditions because this is a technical term, but induced demand is what happens if you make it wider, more cars will come, and eventually you'll have the same traffic congestion problem, and you'll just kick the can down the road. Instead, we could invest in the quality of our infrastructure so that our roadways are less dangerous to use, that you can drive through them more easily. I think we also need to invest in a wide variety of different transportation modes. I think we need more bus service, more buses at shorter intervals, so that it's a realistic way and a reliable way for folks to get around town. I think we need to invest in our pedestrian infrastructure, higher quality sidewalks with shade. We need bike lanes that actually protect cyclists from traffic coming towards them and from behind them. I also would like to see rapid transit, direct transit routes between places like Fort Braden and Woodville, and then closer in towards the center of Tallahassee. That way, folks who live out there and work inside of Tallahassee would have an option that's more reliable for public transportation. Basically, there's a lot of ways that we can solve this problem. It just requires funds. It requires an investment, and that investment is only possible if we've got folks in office who understand how to work a budget and don't have other loyalties that they have to balance. They can focus their time, they can focus their energy on making sure that folks get the investment in the services that they need.
Thank you.
Okay, very much. Thank you. Mr. Caban, what's your thoughts on this particular question? I'll reread it. If there are traffic congestion problems, then widening roads is the best answer. Is that true or false? And then how would you, as county commissioner, work to solve the issue with regards to improving our transportation logjam here in our county?
So I know you're looking for a yes or no answer for this question, but the problem with District 2 is that it's so diverse, and I really do believe that's a situational question. If you're in the area, for example, let's talk around by the airport, where we have a lot of big development and big projects going on there. Well, if we don't widen the road when that project is done, I really do believe folks are going to become upset when they try to get home every day and are stuck in a 2-lane traffic. And so I really do believe it's situational. I don't believe it's a one size fits all. I don't think there's a silver bullet to this answer. In our campaign, we've knocked on over 4,000 doors. The number one feedback we've heard from our constituents is infrastructure, and that they want safer roadways. So in this particular district, I think we need to listen to our constituents and make sure. I mean, at the end of the day, it's their tax dollars. It's their district, and as a commissioner, I know I would be working for them. One thing I will say to increase mobility is I think we need more sidewalks. I mean, I think that anyone in this forum, anyone listening would have to agree. It's a shame that we have elementary school students standing in ditches, waiting on their bus stop in the dark with no street lights. I think it's a shame that we don't have safe sidewalks for kids to walk to school or walk to a park. I believe where we are in this time and in our generation, that this is a direct example of lack of equality. And I think it's a must. We got to have safe sidewalks. We got to have safe roadways. We have to have better lighting.
Okay. All right. And did we hear from Mr. Epstein on this one?
No, not yet.
Okay. All right. And same question to you. If there are traffic congestion problems, then widening the roads. Is that the best answer? And what are your thoughts with regards to solutions to our traffic logjam?
So I think in general, widening roads is not the solution. There are some instances where, yes, that is required. But for the most part, it wastes tens of millions of dollars. And just think about that, tens of millions of dollars that are going to roadways instead of people. I think there are a lot of creative solutions that we can have at the neighborhood level. and this will help hasten our transition to clean energy. You see all these little electronic bikes and mopeds, and if you go down to St. Petersburg, their Central Avenue has them all up and down there. So I think instead of having private companies, we need to be able to see how we can help subsidize folks getting those in their possession. So we can look at more of a neighborhood scale type of transit, in addition to increasing our public transit and our bus system. Like I said, we need people who live in District 2 to get up to the Amazon facility where they can work. That's a big thing I've been hearing is specifically about that. I think the CRTPA needs to completely look and reorganize their priorities and their list. I think that we need to be looking at the folks that need it the most. For example, the Thomasville multi-use trail, that's nice, but West Tharp Street is getting leapfrogged for that. And Blueprint doesn't expect to finish that until the end of 2040. Okay, that's not acceptable. These are projects that got reshuffled and moved down the line. So anything that we can do to help bring that money back to our community, since District 2 gets the least amount of investment, is important. And when we do these projects, we need to not displace people, like the Airport Gateway, which has a perfectly good 4-lane road just over, a little further over. And then if you look at Highway 20, when it was widened, now everyone has stormwater issues. Now there's water all up in their property. And what I've been hearing is the people who are wealthy could get lawyers and defend themselves, but most folks just have to deal with it. So I'm very versed in stormwater, and those are things that we need to be thinking about, the people that live there already and how we can prioritize that funding.
Thank you, Mr. Epstein. Now, for our next question, I didn't get to say this in my early introduction of myself, but I am a Tallahassee, Leon County native and was an Army brat, but when my dad retired from the military, he retired here in Tallahassee, and I grew up here in Leon County. Specifically, I grew up in District 2. And I am 50 years old, so I am old enough to remember when the issue that we're going to talk about next was not nearly as pronounced as it is now. And that's one of violent crime. Violent crimes in this area in Leon County, 7.82 per 1,000 residents in Leon County, one of the highest rates in Florida of victimhood. Chances of becoming a victim of a violent crime is 1 in 128. Violent crime traumatizes the victim and families and children, as each of you well knows. Next question stems from the Anatomy of a Homicide report, which was compiled and distributed by Sheriff Walton McNeil. To better understand the homicides in our community, Sheriff McNeil assembled a team to develop the research-based report, and the report identified individuals most at risk of committing or being involved in violent crime. These individuals are, not surprisingly, young Black males, juvenile offenders, those suspended or expelled from school and dropouts, as well as those in second chance or alternative schools, those living in neighborhoods deemed high density for homicides and shootings, recent violent crime victims, and individuals known to carry illegal guns. So with that, given this information, what specific measures would you, as the next Leon County Commissioner, strive to put in place to reduce violent crime in Leon County? I'm going to start with Mr. Crowley, then it's going to go to Mr. Caban, Mr. Epstein, and we will finish up with Ms. Allen. Mr. Crowley, you have the floor.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is an extremely important issue because, as we've said, that this is the future that we're talking about. These are the children who will take over from us when we are old. I think looking at that report, which, by the way, took a tremendous amount of courage for the Sheriff's Department to put together to see a problem and look inward and see what we could do better. I think looking at those findings, you see two important points. One, there's a lack of trust between the community and the law enforcement. That's why in a lot of these situations, this interpersonal violence, it stems from young men feeling like they need to take these matters into their own hands, whether it's a matter of retribution or feeling disrespected or whatever else. It explodes into these moments of interpersonal violence because they feel like they can't go to law enforcement and trust law enforcement with the issues that they face. So I definitely think that that takes some serious programmatic reforms with law enforcement to make sure that we are addressing the issues that folks, particularly in different Black communities, are experiencing. If their home gets burglarized, we need to make sure we're taking that seriously. But we also don't need to come down and crack down on folks who are just hanging out in a public space. Besides that, we also, from those findings, we see a severe alienation from the community that manifests in this way. Folks who don't feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. They feel like they are stuck in a situation that they cannot escape, and that wears on you, and it pushes you into a situation where all you have are bad options. And we can do something about this. We can invest in services. We can invest in mentorship programs. We can invest in making sure we're providing communities and families in particular with the resources they need so that they have better options. They can get training for jobs. They can start a business that they've been dreaming of, and they can plug into society in a way that they don't feel so alienated. So those are some of the things that we could do if only we had the political will to build a budget that puts people over profits.
And your time is up.
Chuck, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Mr. Caban, what are your thoughts with regards to the anatomy of a homicide report and what things we could put into place, what the commission could put into place to reduce violent crime in Leon County?
Yes, thank you for the question. I mean, anyone here would agree that violent crime in Leon County is a problem. First, I would like to say that I do not believe that we should or can police our way out of crime. I also would like to commend the sheriff because I do appreciate and respect the efforts that they are doing every single day to respond to crime. And I do believe they have a very tough job in today's environment. In regards to anatomy of a homicide, that was a very great report. And Sheriff McNeil was smart and calculated by using the resources to get that data, because the data got put in front of us what we already knew, that crime is tied to poverty and issues with our youth. So I believe as a county commission, we should be looking at fixing the problems out at the root. I think we need to look at how are we going to stimulate our economy? How are we going to provide folks with high-paying jobs? How are we going to promote equal prosperity amongst our demographics on the South Side and in District 2? Most importantly, why are we still kicking kids out of school? We know it doesn't work. We have the data, we have the statistics. We should be providing our kids with mental health. We should be looking at alternative ways to educate them on their decisions. And I also believe that we should look at continuing to push for a trade school, show kids that there are more options and alternatives after high school other than college or crime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Epstein, same question. What would you like to see done from a county commission standpoint to reduce violent crime here in Leon County?
Well, I think, again, this report is the hot topic, and as it should. But it clearly shows that early intervention programs are needed for our youth. And I think that we need to do a better job of investing into what we already have here, nonprofits and businesses that cater to this. I know the Children's Services Council was supposed to help address this. I have my doubts about how that funding is going to be distributed and how actually it's going to help. Because if you look, a fair amount of this funding is going to schools and programs up in the Northeast where they don't have Title I schools. They already have good funding. One of the concepts that I brought to the city was in 2018, we applied for a grant to refurbish Ashmore's in Frenchtown, create an intergenerational museum, a coding laboratory, and a STEM plus arts learning center where kids could be bussed in from all around the county. That is eventually got funded. We didn't get credit for that grant, but if kids need, I think, a place to belong. And I was able to get that growing up. I marched in the marching band. I was on the drum line. I could be who I am. I didn't have pressures from other folks. I had a place of belonging. And that's something I think everyone in our county needs to be able to feel. And they need to have appropriate outlets. You know, one of our concepts for that grant was to create street art and graffiti competitions, right? Graffiti is a central tenet of hip hop, and people need a place that is safe for them to do this. Not necessarily, I know that's, you know, part of the appeal is the aspect of it not necessarily being legal, but we need a place for our youth to be able to come together. And I think we need to not defund our police. I think we need to refund our police, which looks at trying to see how we can better allocate resources.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Epstein. Last, Ms. Allen, if you could give us your insight on the violent crime issue here in Leon County, how to go about perhaps targeting some of the individuals identified in the anatomy of the homicide report by Sheriff McNeil, the juvenile offenders and individuals who are lower income, who might be dealing with issues that lead to violent crime. What are your thoughts, Ms. Allen?
Thank you, Chuck.
Yes, ma'am.
See, I have not read the report, The Anatomy of a Homicide. I have not read that, but I will read it. I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for 25 years. My students either pass the standardized test or they make gains. Most students come to school to learn. I disagree with the victim mentality. I think, first of all, we need to tell these young folk that they are not victims. The way you become a victim usually is by putting yourself in harm's way. It is not an everyday occurrence like it was in the 50s and the 40s that Black people were just hunted down. That's not the norm. That's an exception of they're hunted down just because of the color of their skin. I think the first thing we need to tell these young people that they're just as good as anybody else. They can do anything anybody else can do. They are not victims. They put themselves in situations that are dangerous. And we need to talk to them about that. Now, I think that there's not as much crime in the county. That's what I think. But after talking to people, they say, oh, there's crime, there's crime. So, but in the city, that's where the crime is. I think the first crime, and I keep saying this, now I don't live in the city, but that they had a police chief who had killed an unarmed Black young man. That was a slap in all of our faces. That was telling Black men and boys that you don't matter. I never would have, as a commissioner, agreed to hire him with that smudge. Now, they say he's a good fella, and he could be. I don't know him. But there had to be 20 other people just as qualified. So I think right there, you told young Black men that we don't care about you. By hiring rebel.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Yes, and
Okay, thank you, Ms. Allen. Thank you kindly. All right, for our next question, I want to turn to the environment. All right, now I think everybody can agree that we love beautiful trees. And Tallahassee and Leon County has some of the most beautiful trees and canopy roads in North Florida. And I think we're all for clean water, clean energy, and clean air. But the question is Leon County doing what needs to be done now to protect these natural resources for future generations? All right, so I'm going to start with you, Mr. Caban. Number one, what solution would you propose to better protect our trees? Number two, what would be a faster and better solution for cleaner energy and thus cleaner air? And then number three, what is the most important thing that you would do as county commissioner to preserve our bodies of water and the quality of our water? So, and I can repeat these questions as many times as necessary as we go through. So Mr. Caban, you first on this. What solution would you propose, number one, to better protect our trees?
Yeah, if I miss something, just let me know.
Okay, sure.
I think we need to continue to push a permitting process that protects our trees. I believe in Leon County right now, that is already in place. You cannot take down an oak tree without a permit. As you know, that's kind of a job that's impossible to oversee every single oak tree in Leon County. You can't watch them all. And so I think as long as we continue to allocate resources and let people know if you see someone, imposing on a tree or, potentially harming it with a development, then you need to red tag it and stop it in its tracks.
Absolutely. All right. Question 2. What would be a faster and better solution for cleaner energy and thus cleaner air?
I think we got to push people to a more organized and useful bus system. We have parts in the county. We have Woodville and Fort Braden. We don't have a great bus system at all that brings them into town. So how do we expect folks to come to work? They're going to get in their car and they're going to drive. I think this also helps that problem we talked about earlier about spanning roadways. Let's condense people to a bus system, or let's look at improving our sidewalks and promote people, especially on the south side, to bike.
Excellent. Question 3. And when I say excellent, you hit the 1 minute mark, and I'll repeat that for all the candidates. We've got 3-part questions here. So if you can tailor your responses to each to 1 minute or under, that would be perfect. Number 3, what is the most important thing that you would do as county commissioner to preserve our bodies of water and the quality of our water?
I would attack the septic tank crisis in Woodville and Lake Munson. That is not only an issue to the environment, but it's a life safety issue, and it is disrupting our constituents' quality of life every single day.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Epstein, you're up next in the hot seat. 3 questions, 1 minute max for each answer. Question number 1, what solution would you propose to better protect our trees?
Well, I've got to disagree with Christian here. I think our permitting process is the problem. We have no protection for oak trees. We have no protection for anything right now. You can cut it, clear cut it, and then mitigate it by planting smaller trees. We need strong protections. And by the way, when they go through all these site plans, they have to geolocate every tree. They have to measure it. So they know exactly where every single tree is on all of these developments. So we need to strengthen our permitting process to actually require that a certain percentage of these trees are saved. We need to put protections in for heritage trees, large or important cultural trees, so they cannot be cut down. And we also need to, at the county level, require a certain percentage of the vegetation. I'd like to see 50%, but I'd settle on about 35% of large developments to be preserved. If you look at Walani, they've set aside 40% for open space, quote unquote, but we need to be preserving the trees and the vegetation there because that's what keeps our air clean and our water clean. So we need to fix our permitting process to protect our cultural, natural, and heritage resources so we can have development and no one has to worry.
Up.
Okay. Question number 2. What would be a faster and better solution for cleaner energy and thus cleaner air?
I don't really think there's a fast solution. We need to do everything we can to invest into solar power and other renewable resources, but we're kind of on the hook for natural gas right now if we want to keep the lights on. So we just need to be pushing for that and pushing for electrification as much as possible. That will help with the keeping the emissions out of the air. And we also need to be looking at our zoning and rezoning as well to, again, protect important natural resources because that nature is cheap. Nature is what cleans our air and water naturally. Everything else we do is emulation.
Number 3, what is the most important thing that you would do as county commissioner to preserve our bodies of water and the quality of our water?
Well, I could go off. I need like 10 minutes for this. Number 1, the county needs to make low intensity development LID mandatory. They keep saying we have great incentives. Well, no one ever takes the incentive. It needs to be mandatory. We also, like I said, need to mandate that a certain large percentage of all large development is preserved. As far as Lake Munson, we need what's called a muck remediation facility. And I went before the county to try to get them to do this. They put it off. With me, it's going to happen and it will happen in the next few years. But we need a place where we can actually take everything off the bottom of the lake. There are millions of pounds of phosphorus and nitrogen there. Put it somewhere else and grow stuff to actually physically remove that. We need to actually have active filtration also on all of our stormwater ponds, and have a comprehensive testing process for sites. We need to increase them up in the watershed. They've been halved by 70, or not halved, but gone down by 75%. These are just a few of the things that I would be doing day one.
And your time is up.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Epstein. Ms. Allen, your turn in the rapid fire. 3 questions. Question number 1, what solution would you propose to better protect our trees? Ms. Allen. Okay.
I was undoing my camera.
Yes, ma'am.
I think the county does a fairly good job protecting trees. I know that when someone tries to open a business, there's certain trees they can't cut down. There's others that they have to plant. So they are trying to protect the trees, and I'm learning more about that. As far as clean energy, that is, everybody needs to take responsibility for clean energy in their own lives. Stop wasting so much. Turn the lights off when you leave out of a room. I'm bad at that because I like light. I want my whole house to be lit up all at the same time. But that would definitely help. And stop throwing away so much food, because that goes and that emits bad carbon.
Your time is up.
Okay, thank you. Now, you actually answered from my ear 1 and 2 in that question. Yes, ma'am. So I'm going to finish up with number 3. If you were Leon County Commissioner, if you're elected, what would you do to preserve our bodies of water and the quality of our air?
And the quality of our air?
I'm sorry, the quality of
that
our
wasn't
water.
the only other questions.
Right, no, ma'am, I'm sorry about that. I misspoke. So the quality of our water. Yes, ma'am.
You know, we have the best water, I think, in the world. I love our water. I drink it right out of the tap. We have good water. Every report I've ever read says our water is high quality water. I think that the county is doing what they need to do as far as switching over the septic tank system. And I think that's a good thing. And I'm going to make sure that that happens. I happen to live in an area where that is supposed to be done. And I've been told it will happen by early 23. And I will make sure that happens. I am talking with people in the county about making sure that the septic tank system is switched over.
Okay, and the last part is, because you still had some time left, did you have anything else, Ms. Allen, that you wanted to say about question number 2, which is, what do you think would be a faster and better solution for cleaner energy and thus cleaner air? Or did you pretty much already address that one in your initial comments?
Okay. Well, you know, if I lived in the city, I would say walk, but I don't. That's another reason we've never had a public transportation system in the Woodville area where I work, where I live. And I tried to, when my children were young, tried to get one. They said not enough people rode it. So we could look into having more public transportation and walking more. That would be good for our health. And bicycling, using scooters. But maybe scooters might have bad energy.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Allen. And then Mr. Crowley, your turn with 3 questions. Question number 1, what solution would you propose to better protect our trees?
Yes, thank you very much. I do not believe that the current protections are nearly strong enough. You can see the evidence of that with all the clear cutting development that we see throughout our community. Not only the clear cutting, but the scraping up of the topsoil, which is just so bad and so detrimental to our environment. You can plant all the saplings that you want, but it does not replace what has been taken away and destroyed for our local ecology. There's animals that depend on those trees And when you start pulling the cards out from underneath them, the whole deck of cards will collapse. So we need to be a lot more intentional. I think, you know, there are grants that are out there, there are programs out there that can take an aerial photograph of our tree canopy and use software and programs that can analyze to find where different trees are, which communities need more tree cover. And we can see in real time as our tree canopy is either depleting or growing. And we keep hearing that our tree canopy is fine and there's no reason to worry. We're not depleting our tree canopy. I don't believe it. And I would like to see evidence of where we're actually headed. But I would advocate for much stronger penalties and much stronger observation of these trees. Listen, when it comes to other crimes, we've got no problem spending whatever money it takes to crack down on these crimes. It's against code to cut down these trees. We need to spend whatever money it takes so that we're penalizing folks who do it.
And your time's up. Perfect.
Okay, perfect time. Number two, what would be a faster and better solution for cleaner energy and thus cleaner air?
Yeah, I don't believe that there's a very quick one that we can do. I do think that there are substantial changes that we can make. I think when we need to look at our land use and our zoning, the more we spread out, the more we expand our urban service area, this makes it more difficult to get across to service all of the community. That takes up fossil fuels. It takes up energy to service those, and it ends up disrupting more of the ecological environments out there that have heretofore been untouched. I do think we could, in the short term, take a look at some of the incentives that we provide at the local government level that could encourage people to replace their windows with more efficient windows, that could encourage them to update their air conditioning or other systems within their house. There are some incentives out there, but they're nowhere near generous enough to really move the needle on this. So I think it's going to take a commitment to investing real funds. We need a lot of money behind this type of initiative, and we can only do that if we stop giving away our money on things that benefit private interests.
Okay, and last question. If you're elected as county commissioner, what do you believe would be the most important thing that you would do to preserve our bodies of water and the quality of our water?
Yeah, I would stop expanding our urban service area. I would end the practice of our local officials of prioritizing the interests of developers over neighborhoods. I think that's something that I've seen for a very long time, and folks are starting to recognize that. Listen, that's why I don't take developer money, because I don't want to be beholden to them. I don't want anyone to see my decision making up there and think that I'm voting a certain way because I owe somebody a favor. We need to put our communities in the driver's seat of the future of this community. The change is coming, growth is coming, but we don't need to expand that urban service area. All that does is it increases the profits. It makes it cheaper for developers to build out there. We can build within our urban service area and leave, stop the growth of impermeable surfaces, which contributes to runoff and other issues that make our water more and more toxic every year.
Thank you. Thank you so kindly. All right. Well, we have passed the first part of this afternoon's candidate forum, and we're going into the second portion, which will be where we take questions from the audience. And again, we thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. And so with that, we would love to see all of our viewers during this time. So please allow video now. If you have your video off, go ahead and bring it up, and let's bring up the lights, so to speak. If you have a question and have not already done so, place that question in the chat, because we want to hear from you. You will have 1 minute to ask your question, and each candidate will have 1 minute to answer your question. Co-hosts will let me know who has a question, and I will call your name for your question. Our co-hosts will unmute everyone now. So please make your question applicable to all candidates, okay? Let's see who's first. Now, the first one, I believe, is from Donna. Is Donna, is it Cottrell? Okay. The first question we have is from Ms. Donna Cottrell. And I see she's still in the
Donna, will
Zoom.
you please unmute yourself? We want to hear from you.
Okay, let's see. And it could be she might be having technical difficulties, but I can scroll back up to where her question was. If you give me a second. She had one of the early ones. Okay, I think I have found it. So I'll go ahead and pose her question for you, and then we'll let the candidates have 1 minute each to respond. Ms. Donna Cottrell asked, what do you know about the toxins in Lake Munson? Do you have a solution for removing the toxins from the lake and other waterways in the county? So let's start with Ms. Allen first, starting with alphabetical order again, and then we'll go right down the list. Ms. Allen, the question from Ms. Donna Cottrell was, what do you know about the toxins in Lake Munson? And do you have a solution for removing those toxins from that lake and other waterways in the county? Ms. Allen, you are on mute. Please unmute yourself. Yes, ma'am. I can hear you.
Good. I understand that Lake Munson is the worst lake, and there's green, I guess, algae maybe growing on top of it. If I were a county commissioner, it wouldn't be this bad. I don't understand how it's gotten to this point. So whatever, I would have been in there looking for answers, and I find answers when I look for them. I get things done. So there is no reason for it to be that way. But I think switching from the septic tank might help the crisis. But I would have had something done about it a long time ago. Or I would have brought it to the community. I would be asking the community, the people who live there. I would be asking people, what do we need to do? What can be done? That's how I would be a commissioner. I would ask the community what is the best thing for us to do. I wouldn't be.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next up, Mr. Caban, what is your thoughts on Ms. Cottrell's question about Lake Munson and removing any toxins that are at the bottom of that lake or any other waterways in our county?
From my understanding, Lake Munson has been poisoned with blue algae and over nutriented by Tallahassee City Urban Services runoff. And I would address it by immediately rectifying the issue with the septic tanks. I sat in a meeting in the Woodville Community Center where folks were upset because they don't have the money to manage their septic tanks, and they have expired. And it's gross to say this, but it's leaking sludge right into Lake Munson. When it comes to fixing the issue, I think that we need to look at a short-term issue, which is helping folks empty out their septic tanks, but then look at a long-term solution, which is getting them off septic tanks and onto sewage. When it comes to cleaning up Lake Munson, I'm a firm believer we should allocate resources and bring in a professional crew that handle this stuff every single day.
Okay, thank you so much. Next up, Mr. Crowley, same question. Lake Munson, toxins at the bottom, toxins at other waterways in Leon County. How would you address it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've spoken with folks who live out on Lake Munson, Miss Rivers and others who have, tangible health impacts, lesions on their body, respiratory illness because of what's happening over there. To me, it's one of the greatest examples of a government kicking the can down the road for generations, ignoring a very serious problem as it grows and grows, because the people that are impacted by that problem, they don't have the money, the connections, the wealth, and the power that is needed in this town to get your problems addressed. And it's unfortunate, but that's just how government works, and it shouldn't be. And we can change that. We could absolutely, take up this grant opportunity. We could to pull the toxic sludge out of the lake. It's ridiculous that we have to even say those words. Pull the toxic sludge out of the lake. It's a no-brainer. We need to be giving money to put these facilities in place. But we can't do that because the folks who are in power right now, every dollar we spend on environmental cleanup is a dollar they can't funnel to their donors. So, I think we need to take a real look at this budget-wise and with respect to who funds the people that we send to the county commission.
And your time's up.
All right, perfect timing. Okay. And then last, Mr. Epstein, you had started talking about this a little bit earlier. What are your thoughts on the question from Ms. Donna Cottrell?
Well, since we started talking, I've gotten 3 emails about just this very topic. I have amassed a bunch of experts in the fields to address this issue. The grant opportunities are out there, but basically we need to test upstream. The county said that they needed to do so. A Florida Geological Society survey showed that there are probably active sources of PCBs and heavy metals coming into the lake, and the city has refused to do anything about it. Terry Ryan and our group had to sue the city to even get emails between the city and the county addressing this issue. So we need to test upstream, do the septic tanks, but it's a simple concept. We have all these nitrogen and phosphorus, which is muck on the bottom of the lake. And like I said before, our concept was to take a boat that mechanically harvests the plants and the algae and also dredges this stuff up and use it like a spray field. And then you grow stuff from it. This is not a new concept. It's happened everywhere. And a report put out in 1994 in conjunction with Leon County said the very same thing. This has been kicked down the road for 30 years and people are getting sick and they're dying from it. It's time to do something about it. The solutions are there. It's just the courage to do something about it. And with me, you'd have an expert on the board who will be pushing for it. This wouldn't be staff. It would be me who's coming up with these solutions and making it happen.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Mr. Epstein. Now we have a good friend of mine who's joined us this afternoon, Mr. John Hedrick, who has a question that he would like to pose as well. John, if you can unmute yourself and go ahead and pose your question live, Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Hobbs. Thank you, Mr. Hobbs, Chuck. The question I've got for everybody is, it was touched on briefly by most everyone, but this is more specific. Would you favor expanding public transit throughout Leon County? If so, how would you do it with the city? Interlocal funding agreement, authority, other? I'll take it from there.
Okay, with that, Mr. Caban, let's start with you first, then Mr. Crowley, then Mr. Epstein, and we'll finish up with Ms. Allen. Go ahead.
I'm absolutely a fan of it. I think that it doesn't make sense that we are trying to promote, a easier mobility and a better, cleaner air environment district. But District 2 is so broad. It goes from Woodville, it goes all the way to Fort Braden. We need a bus system that can help folks get to town back and forth, and that ultimately helps create a better quality of life. When it comes to funding, I think there's a bunch of different ways we could really approach that. We could look at a partnership with the city. We could look at grants. We could look at moving funds from different places amongst our budget. But I'm pretty confident, seeing how the county is spending its current money, that there's plenty of opportunities that we could get this done.
Excellent. All right, Mr. Crowley.
Absolutely, and this is another area that I've been very interested in since I studied transportation planning back in graduate school. I think there are some things that we're doing okay when it comes to transit, having ridden the buses from within the urban core. But we need to do a lot better. It takes 45 minutes, maybe an hour in between buses. So if you miss your bus, you're completely out of luck. And that's not sustainable. That's not realistic for working people. So we need to not only invest in what happens in the urban core, but like I said earlier, we need a direct line that just goes back and forth between population hubs like Fort Braden and Woodville, so that folks who live out there and work over here have an alternative. It's going to take a cooperation between the city and the county. It's going to take a lot of investment on both of our parts. But if we've got folks in office who have a background in public budgeting and finance and have a background in transportation planning like myself, then we can get this done.
Excellent. Okay. Mr. Epstein, wait a minute. I'm doing this right. Yep, Mr. Epstein.
Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure where to get the funding. I'm pretty sure, like Will said, that there's a way, and Christian said, to look at our existing budget. I think that we need to stop funding road projects, like you said, to widen, and new roads in general. I think we need to have a moratorium on new roads and make sure that we re-rank our projects and make sure that this is going towards existing problems. And I think when we have large developments or we have big employers like Amazon who come in, I think there should be a requirement in the budget there to invest in local public transportation. So I think that there's a way to work with the city and the county together via interlocal agreement. That's the CRTPA. I think they need to completely look at how they've ranked and executing their projects. And no one really wants to talk about how to integrate the city and county better and consolidation, but I think that maybe that for at least some aspects of our local government would be good. We don't need 3 different stormwater teams, okay? We don't need 3 different teams, Blueprint City and County, working on many of these projects. Maybe we can consolidate and make things better that way.
Okay. And then last, Ms. Allen, response to Mr. Hedrick's question.
I think areas like Woodville and Highway 20 need, Bluntstown Highway need public transportation. I would have to look at the budget and other pools of money to see where we could make it happen.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. All right, and I see that the questions are starting to filter on in now. So with that, I don't want to cause any delays. Let me scroll back up. I saw one. I want to make sure I get these in order in which they were received. There's a question from Facebook from Susan, which is, what would you recommend be done to protect women's reproductive and health rights who live in Leon County? So we're going to start with Mr. Crowley first, then Mr. Epstein, then Ms. Allen, and then finish with Mr. Caban. Go ahead, Mr. Crowley. How would you, or what would you recommend to be done to protect women's reproductive and health rights in Leon County?
Absolutely, and this is an incredibly important issue to me. When I saw that decision come down, even when I saw the leaked decision attacking reproductive rights in the entire country, I was out there with folks at the demonstration, standing up for those rights, because I think that they're essential. I think that the county absolutely has a role to play. It may not be politically correct to say so, but I do believe we have an interest to stand up for the rights of our constituents. I think one thing that we have control over is regulating certain organizations that claim to serve the interests of folks who are in that situation that have a pregnancy that they don't know what to do about. But they claim to serve those folks, but what they really do is they provide misinformation, sometimes outright fabrications, and they delay and obstruct that person from getting the health care they need until it's too late. So I think those so-called crisis pregnancy centers need to be aggressively regulated in what kind of misinformation they're allowed to pump into our community. Aside from that, we can make sure that we are providing information and educational campaigns and whatever kind of financial support we can to organizations that provide this education, and also can link folks up with organizations even outside of the state if necessary, because this is this is an attack on women, trans men, non-binary folks, people who need this healthcare. It's essential healthcare, and we should do everything we can as a community to stand up for them, because that's what we would want for ourselves.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Crowley. Mr. Epstein, what would you do with regards to trying to protect women's reproductive rights and healthcare rights in general as a commissioner?
I think that the county has limited scope in what they can do. What we should do is make sure that Planned Parenthood and other similar type healthcare providers are funded, and that the county has a very clear resource, a website, other ways of outreach to make sure that people understand where they can get help. I think that also, as Will said, that if someone needs to go out of state to get care, that we should be able to figure out how to help them. This is a very personal choice, and I don't appreciate the one side or the other. You know, it should be up to the individual, and it should be an option for everyone. So I just think that we need to give a voice to people and make sure that there are resources that are easily accessible at the county level.
And your time's
as
up.
well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Epstein. Ms. Allen, same question. What can be done what would you be able to do or be trying to do as a Leon County Commissioner to help protect women's reproductive rights and healthcare rights in general?
Hey, ma'am.
I would not want to interfere with a woman's right to do what she wants to do with her body. It's my responsibility to do what I need to do for myself and my own body. There are rules. I don't think there's one size that fits all. I think every woman is an individual and each case should be looked at differently. I don't think you can just put them all in the same basket. There are different, everybody has a different situation and they should be looked upon equally. So if you're going to have somebody that's pro-life at the table, you need to have somebody that's pro-choice at the table. I think the woman needs to have all the possible information available so that
your time
she
is
can
up.
make the
Thank
best
you.
decision for herself.
Thank you so much, Ms. Allen. And then last, Mr. Caban, what are your thoughts on this same question with regards to women's health rights and reproductive rights specifically? There you go. You got it.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I was having some communication issues.
Got you.
I think that this is a threat to the LGBTQ plus community. Obviously that as a county government, we're very limited what we can and can't do. But I think this is a threat, and I think that we need to continue to be vocal and come together as a county commission, and we need to stand up for women and their rights. I mean, I'm pro-choice, and I believe that we should be a voice for every woman in our commission.
All right, thank you. All right, now another friend of mine had a question, and I see him. I think he's unmuted. My buddy Bill Davis, counselor, go ahead and pose your question to the group of candidates.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to do that. This is, as you know, a Democratic Party forum, and a lot of us are interested in the campaign contributions that have been made by the candidates to this race. So my question is, have any of you candidates contributed to a Republican running for office? How recently, and have you actually gone out of state to contribute as well to Republicans? Thank you.
Okay, with that, first up would be, I believe, Mr. Epstein, followed by Ms. Allen, Mr. Caban, and then finish up with Mr. Crowley. Mr. Epstein, you have the floor.
So I'm definitely a big D Democrat. I have not contributed to any Republican campaigns. I also pride myself on not being dogmatic in my views. I have many friends who are Republicans. About half the folks I work with on environmental issues are Republicans, and they care. I would love to vote for a Republican. I know it's a Democratic forum. I think they're few and far between. We have neoconservatives and other folks. So no, I have not made any contributions. I would support someone if they were good people, but it seems to me that the Democrats, at least now, are much more focused on the environment and the issues that affect the people themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Epstein. Ms. Allen, same question posed to you. Have you contributed to any Republican candidates locally, statewide, or even out of state?
The only campaign I've contributed to is my own, and that's the only one I will be contributing to.
Duly
Thank
noted.
you.
Yes, ma'am. Duly noted. All right. Next up, we have Mr. Caban. Same question. Have you contributed to any Republicans locally, statewide, or even out of state?
Yes, I have recently contributed money to a Republican candidate out of in Nevada that we have we obviously I'm a pro-business Democrat, and there's a candidate out there that is very pro-business, and we have some hospitality concepts that we've spent some money in, and we want pro-business people in office. This is a nonpartisan race. The amount of money that I've donated to Democratic candidates significantly outweighs what I've ever donated to a Republican candidate.
All right, thank you for your answer. And then last up, we have Mr. Crowley. Same question.
You're muted.
Mr. Crowley, you're muted. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
All right.
Yes. So I am a proud Democrat, registered. I'm on the Democratic Executive Committee representing this district. But I'm not a blue diaper baby. I found my way from an independent to the Democratic Party because of learning about history, learning about the world. It took me, I think I've been a Democrat for almost 10 years now, something like that. And yes, this is a nonpartisan race, but I do think that folks should be straight with where they're coming from politically. If you say you're a Democrat, you should be a Democrat. You should fight for democratic values. I've never contributed to a Republican as far as I can remember. I would not. I don't care what kind of interests you say that you're serving. We're talking about folks who are attacking Black history, calling it critical race theory, saying it doesn't belong in schools, saying that kids shouldn't know about even the existence of gay folks, of trans folks, that they shouldn't know anything about that that's somehow child abuse. That is reprehensible to me. I think it's a threat not only to our future as a peaceful society, but an immediate threat to the health and safety of people across the country, across the state, and in this very community. Myself, I'm a member of a group that is targeted hatefully and violently by members of this party, the Republican Party. So it is beyond comprehension that how someone could do that. But I'm here and I'm supporting Democrats.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And then we will now go to our third and final part, which is a short answer. Well, the final part obviously would be our closing remarks from each of the candidates. But in this last segment, I'd like for each of you to have a short one-sentence response to the following question. And that is, if you are elected to the county commission, what is the one most important commitment you now make to residents of Leon County, specifically District 2? This is a one-sentence answer only. So I'll repeat again. If you are elected to the county commission, what is the one most important commitment you now make to residents of Leon County? All right, and we're going to start. We're back at the top now. Ms. Allen, you get the first crack. One-sentence answer. What commitment will you make to the citizens? Most important commitment you will make right now to the citizens of Leon County, specifically District 2. Ms. Allen, one-sentence response.
If I'm elected as county commission, District 2, I promise you that I will help save our youth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
I won't
Allen.
say how I'm going to do that because people will steal my ideas.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Allen. Mr. Caban, one-sentence response. What promise or commitment would you make?
Every child will have an equal opportunity.
Okay. All right. Mr. Crowley.
Since I don't take any money from developers or any other big business, you'll never have to look at me up on that dais and wonder if I'm making a vote out of a favor to somebody who donated to my campaign. You'll know that I'm always working for y'all because I'm only beholden to y'all.
Okay. And last, Mr. Epstein.
It may not be as grand, but I will restore Lake Munson and the health of the folks who live around it. And I'm going to do that if I'm elected or not.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I think we're going to go into closing remarks. And I want to ask our judge, Dr. Marsha Turner, how long does each candidate have for the closing remarks?
I believe we've had those now with that last question of their commitment to the residents. And now we'll go into thanking everyone.
All right. Well, with that, I'll start the ball off with that. Number one, I want to thank each of the candidates for coming out this afternoon and speaking earnestly on a number of topics that are serious to all of the citizens of Leon County, but definitely the citizens in District 2. And I wish each of you well in the days ahead as we move closer to Election Day. I also want to thank everyone who thought it not robbery to sit on a Saturday afternoon and be informed citizens, whether you participated via Facebook or some other mechanism. Again, we thank you, whether you're on the Zoom or not, because again, it is important that we have these dialogues often and what have you. And I look forward to being able to participate in similar discussions with good Democrats, as my friend Bill Davis said, in the days ahead, even when the election is over. So with that, Marsha Turner, everyone who allowed me to come in and help out some, thank you all. And I'm going to yield the microphone to Marsha Turner at this time.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your participation in the Leon County Democratic Candidate Forums, and good luck to each and every one of you. Thank you for running. It takes courage, it takes dedication, it takes a tremendous amount of time and energy. Thank you for putting yourself out there and sharing your positions and ideas with us today. Stay tuned for just a few short announcements.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Marsha and Chuck. Bye.
Please remember that a recording of this and every candidate forum is available on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. Thank you all very much for giving us a portion of your afternoon today. Best wishes. Goodbye.
Goodbye.